Here are some rare photos that may blow your mind. Did you know that termite hills can be absolutely gigantic? It turns out that even turtles have to go to the doctor. Here's what one getting an X-ray looks like. Did you know that some grasshoppers can actually be pink? This is what the inside of an elephant's foot looks like. Did you know that baby owls sleep face down on their stomachs? This is a Maine Coon cat that can grow up to 40 inches long. This is what a flying fish looks like with its wings outstretched. This cutie right here is a baby platypus, known as a puggle. This is a sunfish, pictured here with Santa for some reason. Did you know that koalas have fingerprints that are extremely similar to human fingerprints? This is what an X-ray of a pregnant dog looks like. And here is what a turtle's skeleton looks like. This is what a hairless raccoon looks like. This is an example of a leprosy victim back in the Victorian age. And finally, this is what a giant squid's beak looks like. This is the last photograph ever taken of the Titanic. And speaking of that ship, this is what the Great Promenade deck of the Titanic looked like in 1912. And here's what that same deck looks like today. This is what the inside of a cooling tower looks like. And this is how big the Statue of Liberty's face is compared to a person. This is what a completely empty airplane looks like. Did you know that before it found its home in New York Harbor, the Statue of Liberty's head was on display at the 1878 Paris World's Fair? This is the unfinished portrait of George Washington that was used as a basis for the design of the $1 bill. This picture, taken in 1925, shows the passengers on an Imperial Airways flight watching one of the first in-flight movies ever. And this is what in-flight entertainment looked like in the 1960s. Did you know that there's a trapdoor on the Sphinx in Egypt? This is how the Eiffel Tower used to get painted, one precariously hoisted guy with a paint bucket at a time. Did you know that in the hours after he died, a death mask was made of Napoleon Bonaparte's face? This photo from a Seattle lumberyard in 1919 showed just how high stacks of lumber could go in those days. Speaking of lumber, one of the more creative ways bootleggers would hide alcohol during Prohibition was inside trucks lined with wood, complete with a tiny trapdoor. Did you know that during the Battle of Britain in World War II, cows were painted with bright white paint to stop cars from hitting them during the nightly blackouts? This is Franz Reichelt sporting a homemade parachute suit that he was confident would save him if he jumped off the Eiffel Tower. These are the real-life outfits doctors would wear to treat plague patients in the 1600s. The Great San Francisco earthquake of 1906 was the deadliest earthquake in U.S. history, resulting in the deaths of over 3,000 people. In the aftermath of the disaster, you could literally see where the earth split along the San Andreas Fault. This is what a small chunk of a random meteorite looks like. This photo, taken by Louis Botton in 1899, is one of the first photos ever taken underwater. This tea chest is one of 2 surviving chests from the Boston Tea Party back in 1773. And here is what a modern tomato looks like next to a tomato grown with 150-year-old seeds. This is Albert Woolson, the last surviving Civil War veteran. Albert fought for the Union Army and died in 1956 at the age of 106. And here is what a real executioner's mask looked like. This is what the world's oldest soccer ball ever found looks like. And this is the first picture of Earth from the moon, taken in 1966 by Lunar Orbiter 1. Did you know that Mike Tyson's neck measured 20 inches in the 1980s? This dog was actually born with a little tail on its forehead. Adorable. Did you know that cats can have muscular hypertrophy? Basically, they get super buff. And finally, we have a vintage swimming mask from the 1950s. This is an 18th century fire alarm that you needed to hit with a hammer in order to alert the village of a fire. And here is an 18th century machine that allowed researchers to read up to 8 different books at once. And speaking of the time period, this is what a diving suit looked like back then. This is a wheelchair for Holy Roman Empress Elizabeth Christine of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel from the year 1740. Did you know that back in the day, families were forced to install metal cages over the resting spots of their loved ones due to constant grave robbing? Here is a close-up of a two-headed snake. This one is really rare, and it's the cause of a birth defect, when an embryo doesn't totally split. Here is a long-horned orb-weaver spider, also known as the macracantha. This is a rubber beauty mask designed to eliminate wrinkles, massage the face, and promote skin health from the 1920s. Did you know that horse diving used to be all the rage? This is Eunice Padfield and her horse diving head first into a pool of water. This is George Stern and his prized invention, a fast vaporizing fluid that basically let you light your hands on fire and not get burned. Here's a picture of a very safe, normal setup for parents and a baby to enjoy ice skating from the late 1930s. And finally, here's another terrifying rubber beauty mask designed to eliminate wrinkles from the 1920s. This is Boy Samson, the 14-year-old, strongest boy in the world, holding up a grown man on a motorcycle circa 1932. This is Henry Behrens, at one time the world's smallest man, doing a little tango with a cat. These gigantic contraptions are apparently one of the first life preservers ever made. Did you know that babies used to travel up with a luggage on planes? Yep, looks totally fine to me. No problems here. This is Martin Lorello, otherwise known as the human owl, a sideshow performer from the early 1900s who could turn his head almost completely around. And here's what a treadmill looked like in the 1920s. Did you know that for a brief, wondrous moment, portable saunas were actually a thing? Fun fact, in 1924, a game of human chess was played in the Soviet Union. Apparently, this is a group of teachers getting drunk and celebrating spring break in the early 1900s. Party on ladies. Did you know that in 1948, one brave man invented a spoon with a fan on it, meant for cooling soup? I know you've seen a bicycle built for two, but how about a bicycle built for four? This is the Dynasphere, a giant wheel vehicle invented by Dr. J. A. Purves that could go as fast as 30 miles per hour. And this is how condoms were tested back in the 1930s. Here's a scientist testing out a hands-free shaving machine that used robotic arms. This right here is a piano, specifically designed for people on bed rest. This is a giant elephant seal, pictured here at a Paris zoo in the 1930s. In the 1930s, this couple won an Atlantic City dance marathon after dancing for over 1,400 hours. This is one of the earliest designs for roller skates. For some reason, they didn't really catch on. And finally, here's a lady covered head to toe in potatoes. Before he died, Abraham Lincoln had a life mask made of his face. This is what it looked like. This is the last meal Richard Nixon ate in the White House before he resigned. Pineapple, cottage cheese, and a glass of milk. What the hell kind of a combo is that? And here are the contestants for the 1924 Miss America pageant. This is what a typical children's playground looked like back in 1908. This is investor Walter Thornton trying to sell his car for $100 directly after the United States stock market crash in 1929. This is what a float from the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade looked like in the 1930s. This is Lemuel Cook, maybe the oldest living veteran of the American Revolutionary War, photographed in the mid-1800s. And this is the fold-out bed George Washington slept on during the Revolutionary War. This is Charles Ponzi, the infamous scammer that Ponzi schemes got their name from. This picture was taken shortly after David Scott and Neil Armstrong's Gemini 8 space capsule landed in the Pacific Ocean. Here's the 1930 Queen of the Vineyards, Wilma Smith buried head to toe in a bunch of grapes. Did you know that over 80,000 people attended the 1921 heavyweight championship boxing match between Georges Carpentier and Jack Dempsey? This is the Dale Creek Bridge, a bridge built in Wyoming in the 1800s that was so rickety that trains had to slow down to 4 miles per hour to cross it safely. Fun fact, in 1964, Randy Gardner, pictured here, set the world record for the longest time without sleeping after staying awake 264 hours. And here is the top hat Abraham Lincoln was wearing the night he was assassinated. This is Althea Gibson, the first black American to win a tennis Grand Slam title, celebrating at a parade honoring her. This is a picture from Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Can you spot Abe? The picture from 1930 shows what the Empire State Building looked like while it was under construction. This is the aftermath of the Great Molasses Flood of 1919, a deadly event that claimed the lives of 21 people in Boston after a container holding over 2 million gallons of molasses burst. This is Emma Lillian Todd, the first woman to design an airplane. This is Civil War veteran Jacob Miller, a man who was shot right between the eyes and lived for 17 more years. Did you know that, before he retired from baseball, the legendary Lou Gehrig auditioned for the role of Tarzan? They made him carry a spear and everything. These are what some of the Titanic's lifeboats looked like after they were docked in New York following the sinking of the ship. And here is what Harriet Tubman looked like in old age. This is a statue of Anubis, the Egyptian god of the dead, that was found inside the pharaoh Tutankhamun's tomb. This is 455-pound Piet van der Zwart, also known as the fattest man in Europe, in the year 1955. This X-ray, taken by Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, is the first X-ray ever. This is what Chicago's Eureka building looked like after a winter fire was put out by the fire department. Did you know that before he was James Bond, Sean Connery competed in the Mr. Universe pageant in 1953? And this is allegedly the death mask of William Shakespeare. The mask itself was made in 1616, the same year that Shakespeare died, and it was discovered in 1849. However, there's a whole lot of controversy about whether it's actually Bill or not. And while we're on subject, this is the death mask of Ludwig van Beethoven himself. This is the View phone, a video phone developed by Toshiba in 1964 that allowed for real-time proto-FaceTime. And this is how huge the entrance to the Roman Temple of Bacchus is. Here's a vintage picture of a redwood tree, showing just how huge they actually are. This camouflage, known as dazzle camouflage, was extremely popular during World War I. And finally, this is a picture of a newly built telephone tower, complete with a ridiculous amount of wires, in Sweden, circa 1886. This is the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., back in the year 1907. And this is the New York City skyline back in 1931. Look how awesome Nickelodeon Studios looked in the 90s compared to today. And this is the back of the Hoover Dam prior to it being flooded with water. Believe it or not, but this was Tokyo in March of 1945. This is the Times Building, the center of New York's Times Square, under construction in 1903. Here's what women's bathing suits looked like in the 1890s. This is what reclining seats on aircrafts used to look like. And here's what so-called party food looked like in the 1950s, scrumptious. Fun fact, this is actually the original Xbox prototype, GG's Boys. And speaking of gaming, here's what an old one-game Nintendo gaming console from 1982 looked like. This is an old nursing kit from the early 1900s, which contained cocaine tablets, back when it was still used as medicine. This is an iconic 1863 photograph of an escaped enslaved man named Peter, also known as Whipped Peter. And finally, here's a photo which perfectly illustrates how creepy dolls used to be, and unfortunately still are.
This is what Bob Ross looked like before he was rocking his iconic curly hairdo. Here are some of the job necessities for a TWA flight attendant from the 1940s. This is what the city of Hong Kong looked like circa 1920. These are models posing wearing wooden swimsuits in the year 1929. This is Al Capone's prison cell in the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia in the year 1929. This odd-looking contraption is actually an experimental Russian tank from the year 1914. Did you know that it was actually massive Californian droughts that brought about the skateboarding craze of the 1970s? This is the first Moulin Rouge in Paris, circa 1914, before it burnt to the ground the following year. This is model Nina von Schellberg, the mother of famous actress Uma Thurman, posing in the year 1963. The Great Blizzard of 1947 brings all of New York City to an actual standstill. This is Chester E. McDuffie and his so-called submarine armor from 1910. This is one of many open-air schools in the Netherlands circa 1948. This is chess grandmaster and legend Bobby Fischer playing 50 separate games simultaneously in the year 1964. Here's what an assembly line for the B-24 bomber looked like in Fort Worth, Texas in the year 1943. This was the first-class gym aboard the Titanic in the year 1912. California Street in San Francisco, taken in 1964. This is what a hair permer looked like in the 1930s. Terrible flooding in Paris in the year 1910.
This is what the eye of a hurricane looks like from above. Here's the difference in forearm development between a professional tennis player's racket hand and their non-dominant hand. This is what a 20-year-old Dolly Parton looked like. And this is one of the last pictures of the Titanic ever taken. Did you know that the eyes of Michelangelo's David are heart-shaped? Fun fact, you can see volcanic eruptions on Jupiter's moon from space. And this is what the inside of an early passenger airline looked like. This is the world's tallest yew hedge, planted in the 1700s and standing over 45 feet tall. In 1936, architect André Bastevent proposed making the Eiffel Tower accessible by car. It would have looked like this. Here's what a wolf spider looks like head-on. This wild-looking thing is a balloon apron from World War I, a giant net suspended from balloons that was used to help protect England from aerial attacks. Did you know that Queen Elizabeth's dollhouse was as big as, well, you know, a house? And this is what the skeleton of a python looks like. This is what the Himalayan mountain range looks like from space. And here is what it looks like when a Ferris wheel gets deconstructed and taken apart. This is Canadian rancher Jim Sautner and his pet buffalo Bailey, a 2-ton bison he raised and let live in his home. This is Hans Steininger, a man known for his 4-foot beard that allegedly caused his death after he tripped on it. Here is the Frankenstein rabbit, or a rabbit with tentacles, as spotted in Colorado. The reason for the mutation is that they are infected with a mostly harmless Shope papillomavirus. And here is the quite bizarre-looking star-nosed mole, a semi-aquatic animal found throughout parts of North America. I know it's hard to believe, but this is an actual advertisement from the 1950s. And speaking of that decade, check out this retro refrigerator. Groovy. For all of us 90s babies out there, this is what Monica and Rachel's apartment on Friends looked like behind the scenes. And here is a rare photo of Madonna, alongside her then-boyfriend Tupac Shakur, while talking with Sting at a Versace party in New York in 1994. This is a photo of Princess Diana meeting Roger Rabbit at the London premiere of Who Framed Roger Rabbit in the year 1988. Did you know that back in the 1800s, there was such a thing as a 25-cent bill? And from that exact same century, this is a coffin collar, which prevented grave robbers from stealing corpses. Sticking with the 1800s, this is an example of a so-called women's self-defense glove. Eat your heart out, Wolverine. And this is a hidden staircase found within the depths of a Victorian mansion. Believe it or not, these shoes were designed specifically for crushing chestnuts. Fun fact, instead of just destroying it, an 18th century graveyard was actually preserved in the basement of the building built above it. I wonder if it's haunted. And now for something you'll never be able to forget. This is what the original footage for the movie Shrek actually looked like. And finally, this is apparently a Miss Lovely Eyes competition from the 1930s.
Here is one of just 2 remaining northern white rhinoceros left on Earth. This tea chest is one of two surviving chests from the Boston Tea Party, circa 1773. This is the world's longest limo, aka the American Dream limo. The huge vehicle comes equipped with both a hot tub and a helicopter landing pad. Here is what the FBI's fingerprint files looked like in the year 1942. This is what an actual executioner's mask looked like. Here is the world's oldest soccer ball that's ever been discovered. The ball dates all the way back to the 1500s. Sticking with the theme of very old things, this is the world's oldest diving suit. Here is what the inside of Big Ben looks like, behind one of its clock faces. When Hurricane Floyd hit Florida in the year 1999, flamingos at the Miami Metro Zoo took refuge in a bathroom. Here is Arnold Schwarzenegger next to Wilt Chamberlain and Andre the Giant on the set of Conan the Destroyer. This is just how gigantic the femur of a sauropod dinosaur actually is. Here is a set of King Henry's battle armor. Notice its very special feature. This is what a real-life Muffin Man looked like in 1930s London. Here is the throne of King Charlemagne himself, who ruled the Holy Roman Empire. This is the fold-out bed that George Washington slept on during the Revolutionary War. This is the so-called Fiji mermaid, a creature that was supposedly caught in the ocean near the Fiji Islands. This mermaid would go on to be displayed in a circus sideshow. In reality, however, this was actually a combination of a few different animal skeletons hobbled together.
This is the cover of the very first issue of Vogue magazine, published on December 17, 1892. This is what a television set looked like in the 1930s. This is a photo of a New York City set built in the backlot of a studio in Hollywood, California, in the 1920s. This is an image of the Cassius M. Clay Battalion of the Union Army defending the White House and President Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. This is one of the first photos of the Oval Office when it was built in 1909 by President Taft. Here's a photo of Walt Disney at Disneyland before giving his opening day speech on July 17, 1955. And speaking of Walt, this image, shot by Disneyland photographer Renee Bardo, is the last photo taken of him at Disneyland in 1966. Did you know that in the 1980s, Mike Tyson's neck measured 20 inches around? This is the last photograph ever taken of the Titanic. Tragically, the doomed ship would sink just 3 days later. This is a picture of one of the last Tasmanian tigers, an animal that went extinct in 1936. This is George Hackenschmidt, the man credited with inventing the bench press. Did you know that the very first iteration of Ronald McDonald was created by Willard Scott in 1963? This photo, taken by Louis Botten in 1899, is one of the first photos ever taken underwater. This is Stefan Bybrowski, otherwise known as Lionel the Lion-Faced Man. Stefan had a condition known as hypertrichosis that caused hair to grow up to 8 inches long all over his body. This is a point of view shot from a person who got stuck in an elevator shaft. This illusion caused this building to appear as though it's missing a couple of floors. And here's a rainstorm pouring down on just one single house in particular. It must have been dirty. I mean, I don't even know what to say about this. It's just super creepy. And here we have a very unique-looking dental x-ray, making it look almost as though the person's mouth is filled with fire. This is an isolated, rural road that looks like something out of Dark Souls. Would you drive down it at night? Did you know that within a certain department store in Germany, you can actually surf? And this is what a pregnant guinea pig looks like. Speaking of adorable animals, these are what 5-day-old hedgehogs look like. No, this isn't a grape. It's actually the world's largest single-celled organism. This is the first aerial photo ever taken, captured by James Wallace Black from a hot air balloon high above Boston. This is Louisa Ann Swain, the first American woman to ever vote in a general election. Dear God, deep-sea wolf eels are absolutely terrifying. And finally, would you feel comfortable using this public toilet or not? Robert Wadlow was the tallest known man to ever live. He stood at a towering 8 feet, 11 inches tall. Here is a photo of him in a courtroom circa the year 1939. Here we can see the actual Titanic ship in construction in 1910, 2 full years before it set sail. This photo shows the very first McDonald's restaurant in Des Plaines, Illinois in 1955. Although the golden arches look a bit different here, they're definitely still there. Albert Einstein had the greatest mind of the 20th century, if not of all time. Here's what his desk looked like on the day of his death, April 18, 1955. Speaking of Albert Einstein, here's a crossover I bet you never expected. Albert Einstein and legendary actor Charlie Chaplin in 1931, at the premiere of Charlie's movie City Lights. You haven't seen nearly enough movies if you don't instantly recognize the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, or MGM, lion roar. And lucky for us, we've got a behind-the-scenes view of that intro being recorded, circa 1928. Here's a chilling image of a civil rights protest that took place on March 29, 1968. In reality, this shot is much more than what meets the eye. It's from 1966, 3 years after the Beatles' first album came out, and displays fans mobbing John Lennon, who stands on the left. This photo is from the opening day of Disneyland in 1955. Within the photo, we can see Walt Disney himself piloting the Disneyland steamboat, alongside Mickey Mouse, of course. 2025 marked the 97th year of the Oscars. On May 16, 1929, the very first Oscars was held, then called the Academy Awards Banquet. Princess Diana was only 13 years old when this photo was taken in the summer of 1974. Here she's pictured in Scotland at her mother's house, alongside a pony named Sufil. This is a massive crowd in Times Square celebrating the surrender of Japan on August 15, 1945. In the 1880s, the Eiffel Tower was under construction, with painters putting their final touches on the structure. In this picture, a rather daring worker hangs off the tower, with one leg and one arm extended and, of course, no harness whatsoever. In this photo from 1962, 2 performers in drag are arrested by a police officer on charges of masquerading and indecent exposure at the National Variety Artists Exotic Carnival and Ball in New York. In 1910, the Great Flood of Paris took over the city. Here's a rare photo from the flood, where we can see a man on his balcony. This is one of the last known photos of a Tasmanian tiger. The species of animals went extinct in 1936, largely due to hunting by European settlers. This is the cross-section of the 1,300-year-old Mark Twain sequoia tree, cut down in the year 1892 for display in New York. Just last month, a container ship ran aground and almost crashed into a random house in Norway. Here's another angle of how close it actually came. These aren't precious gems. This is actually what sand looks like under a microscope. Did you know that, before airplanes were pressurized for commercial use, flyers had to wear oxygen masks at higher altitudes? This awe-inspiring site is a potato storage facility. And just for reference, that's a 5-foot shovel. This picture, taken in the early 1900s, shows an early basketball game, knee pads and all. Did you know that tourists in Egypt used to be able to climb on top of the Great Pyramid anytime they wanted? This thing here is a road printer, a machine that quite literally prints roads. And these gigantic, funny-looking contraptions are apparently one of the first life preservers ever made. This is Robert Earl Hughes, the one-time world's heaviest man, and his pet dog. This is a replica of what was apparently the world's largest polar bear, standing tall at 12 feet and weighing over 2,000 pounds. And finally, here's an optical illusion for you. No, this car is not actually floating, unfortunately. This is the Mona Lisa, next to a copy that was painted by one of Da Vinci's students. The copy is better preserved, so we can more clearly picture what the Mona Lisa looked actually like when it was first painted. And she even has eyebrows. Here's the original model for Mount Rushmore, showing it was supposed to have full busts along with the heads. And this is what the first ever Taco Bell looked like. You can even visit it at the company's headquarters in California. And speaking of that famous fast food restaurant, this is one of their original menus. Staying on a similar topic, here's who the Wendy's logo was based on: Wendy Morse. whose father Dave Thomas founded the global fast food chain. The past is truly fascinating. If you're interested, here are some tips from the 1960s that will help you remain feminine as you smoke cigarettes. Here is a depiction of prisoners using the first version of the treadmill at Brixton Prison in London in 1825. Fun fact, treadmills were originally invented to help prisoners atone for their crimes. And this is one of the original 1930s Shell gas stations. Here's a version of a selfie stick, all the way back from 1997, taken from a book titled 99 More Unuseless Japanese Inventions. Here's what the Hollywood sign used to look like. It actually used to say Hollywoodland. Not that anyone cares about celebrities anymore. This is interesting. These are the actual ingredients in this cough syrup from way back in the 1800s. I'll take some of that. And here's an old nursing kit from the early 1900s that contained cocaine tablets, back when it was still used as medicine. If you're a sports fan, you'll find this interesting. Here is the original list of basketball rules, created in 1891. And here's what a $5 bill looked like in 1896. The image shows a soldier holding a Krumloff, a curved barrel attachment developed by Germany during World War II for the Sturmgewehr 44 assault rifle. And finally, this picture portrays Hugo Gernsback wearing his Teleglasses, a prototype for a portable television device he unveiled in 1963. This is what a wild peanut growing directly from the ground looks like. Did you know that so many people lose their hats at the Hoover Dam that there's basically a hat graveyard at the bottom? Believe it or not, this is actually what economy class on a commercial plane looked like back in the 1960s. And just in case you've ever wondered, here is what the inside of a quarter looks like. This is what the blowhole on a humpback whale looks like. Were you aware just how huge redwood trees actually are? And speaking of gigantic things, this is what a hummingbird egg looks like compared to an ostrich egg. Here is what the Statue of Liberty looks like from the back. No booty. And this, in all of its glory, is what you could expect a first-class suite to look like on the Titanic back in 1912. And just for fun, here's a sunfish swimming with Santa Claus. And in case you were curious, this is what the skeleton of that sunfish looks like. And while we're still talking skeletons, this is what a penguin's looks like. This infinite-looking staircase is like something taken straight from a dream or maybe the backrooms. This is what the inside of a Coca-Cola freestyle machine looks like. Did you know that, in a French deck of playing cards, instead of seeing J, Q, and K, you'll see V, D, and R? This is John Smith, a Chippewa Indian from Minnesota who claimed to live to 137 years old. And finally, did you know that there are actually vending machines at the top of Japan's Mount Fuji? Just in case you were wondering, this is what happens when you put a highlighter in the microwave. This is how horses fly on a plane, otherwise known as Air Horse One. This is one of the few known photos of Vincent van Gogh, shown here at age 20. This is the 2.7mm Calibri, the world's smallest pistol. Bang! This is what Bob Ross looked like before he had his iconic hairdo. This is a picture of the ice mountains of Pluto, as seen from the New Horizons space probe. This is what Hong Kong looked like circa 1920. Did you know that there's a device called a vein viewer, which shows doctors and nurses where your veins are located? Over the decades, this is what cigarette smoke can do to your walls. This is what the entire United States looks like compared to just a small part of the planet Saturn's North Pole. This is what a young Charlie Chaplin looked like next to when he was in his 80s. And here we have a photo showing just how tiny baby kangaroos are when they're born. You're probably familiar with the front of King Tut's iconic death mask, but have you ever seen the back of it? This is one of the only pictures of President Andrew Jackson, taken shortly before his death in 1845. Did you know that the man on the left played in the NBA almost twice as long as the man on the right? This is what the Statue of Liberty looked like while it was under construction in France. And here is a Japanese spider crab, a species of crab that can grow to be 12 feet across. Did you know that before production began on Bambi, Live deer were brought into the studio to teach Disney artists how to properly draw them. This device was known as a baby cage, a wire cage suspended out of an apartment window, meant to give babies who were born in cities extra light and fresh air. And finally, just in case you were wondering, yes, blue stop signs do indeed exist. Actress and model Deborah Jo Fondren roller skating in the year 1979. A Russian soldier playing an abandoned piano in Chechnya in 1994. Emperor Menelik of Ethiopia in his old age. Image captured in 1896. A forest of totem poles crafted by the Haida people at Skydgate, Haida Gwaii, British Columbia in 1878. German soldier with severe facial injuries that he sustained during World War I. The so-called human serpent, a contortionist, entertained soldiers on the front line during World War I. This is Max Factor, and his invention, the beauty collaborator, in the year 1932. On July 28, 1945, an American B-25 bomber crashed into the Empire State Building, causing the devastation seen in this picture. This is a Model T elevator garage in 1936. And here is American President John Quincy Adams in 1843. Stern but fair. And here are two Victorian women building a pretty intricate snow lady in 1892. This photograph is of a nameless and beautiful woman in 1892, who descended from Filipino and Chinese heritage. Margaret Burkwhite, a photographer for Life magazine, preparing to take a photo from one of the eagles on the 61st floor of the Chrysler Building in New York City circa 1934. This is Robert Wadlow, the tallest man who ever lived, towering above everyone else at 8'11". And here we have a 10,000-year-old glacial boulder inside an Estonia supermarket. And this is a creepy-looking 17th-century plague doctor mask. This is a person standing in the foundation of a skyscraper in order to really show you the scale of just how huge these buildings really are. And here we have a tarantula hawk wasp that's in the process of devouring a huntsman spider's paralyzed body. This picture was clearly taken with a flash on, which made this owl look straight up demonic. What can you see in these clouds? A face or something else entirely? And here, just in case you've never seen one before, we have a pregnant black widow spider. Here's another angle of it. And here we have the skull of a Gigantopithecus, an extinct ape compared to a human skull. And finally, just for fun, check out the size of this dog. If you weren't there for its release, this photo teaches us just how big the Jaws craze was when it came out. Taken in Ann Arbor, Michigan on July 14th, 1975, almost a full month after the movie's release. This picture shows just how popular the film really was. This is a real campaign poster Abraham Lincoln used in the year 1860 during the election, before serving as president from 1861 to 1865. In this 1961 snapshot from the Cleopatra movie set, Elizabeth Taylor is sitting on her then-husband Eddie Fisher's lap. Standing next to them is none other than Richard Burton, her co-star in the film. Now get this, in 1964, Elizabeth left Eddie to marry Richard. Before she was a world-famous movie star and sex symbol, Marilyn Monroe went by her real name, Norma Jean Baker. She got married to her first husband, Jim Doherty, at only 16 years old. He was 21. This photo is from their wedding in 1942. The first ever television broadcast in the United States happened in this picture on April 7, 1927, and it took over 1,000 workers to complete. The first Miss America pageant happened in 1921, and it's safe to say the style was totally different than it is now. In this photo, the contestants are wearing their sashes over their bathing suits. In case you're wondering who the winner was, it was Miss Washington, D.C., second from the left. Helen Keller was a disability activist, author and teacher who lost her sight and hearing as a baby. This is what she looked like at 75 years old, doing chores in the kitchen. This is what one of Apple's first computers looked like. This particular model predates the Macintosh, you know, the first Apple computer that came out in 1984. This early version of the Macintosh is from 1981. Here are two different places on Earth, taken on the exact same day, that had a difference of over 200 degrees in temperature. And this little fellow here is Charlie, one of the smallest horses to ever live. This shows the difference between two legs after an ankle break prevents weight bearing on one. This is what the border between Mexico and the United States looks like at the ocean between Tijuana and San Diego. Did you know that in Finland, the largest size of mayonnaise is called American size? This is Paul Karasin, whose skin turned permanently blue after years of consuming colloidal silver. Did you know that some people have visible rings around their eyes? They are apparently called contraction furrows and are totally normal. This image shows Anthony Joseph Drexel Biddle Sr., a U.S. Marine Corps combat instructor, during a training exercise in 1943. And finally, this is a collection of vintage tattoo models. This tap water became hot pink because of some kind of chemical leak. Yummy. Was this photo taken in Flint, Michigan, perhaps? Check out the difference in these pupils after a box fell on the man's head. And here's some absolutely stunning aurora borealis, truly breathtaking. This grocery store fish had isopod parasites on its tongue. Imagine actually buying it, yuck. Did you know that some leaves actually grow a substance that appears very similar to fur? And here's a house that was completely covered in ice after bearing the brunt of a viscous blizzard. For something on the cuter side, this beautiful black cat only has one single white whisker. I wonder what happened to the others. And speaking of cute, this is a dog standing upon a perfectly frozen lake. Did you know that the exact spot on the flight deck of the USS Carl Vinson, where Osama bin Laden's body was delivered, is reportedly marked with a red paint-eye? This is the Kiss of Death, a marble sculpture located in the Pobla Nou Cemetery in Barcelona. I know you've heard of the praying mantis, but what about the devil's flower mantis? Come to think of it, though, I don't believe I've ever seen a praying mantis in church before. This is the Astolet Dollhouse Castle, aka the world's most expensive dollhouse. It was appraised at over $8 million freaking dollars. The house stands at over 9 feet tall and features working plumbing and electricity. This cow was born on Valentine's Day, and it came out absolutely perfect, don't you think? This is the face of a Stone Age woman that was reconstructed from a 4,000-year-old skull. The supermodel Heidi Klum wore this terrifying worm costume to her own Halloween party. And finally, here's some incredible disfigurement makeup. Look, kids, we found the end of the rainbow. Now, where's the pot of gold? Have you ever seen a completely square cloud before? When this tree was finally cut down, it revealed that a golf ball had been lodged inside of it for God knows how long. And for a bit of levity, here's a seagull photo bombing a picture of ice cream on the beach. No, that isn't an eclipse. It's actually a perfectly timed bounced basketball. Don't look directly at it. This isn't some computer grid from Tron. It's actually the city of LA as seen from above. Someone actually managed to catch the exact moment that a snowflake fell into their dog's open mouth. Good boy. And this is the 2,500-year-old tattoo of a Siberian princess. Man, that artist must have used some good ink. Here, we have an ancient Greenland shark that's possibly been wandering the ocean since the year of 1627. Fun fact, in Australia, a man snorkeling found a wedding ring worth $11,000 around the body of a fish. Here, we have an iceberg passing by a random home in Greenland, which perfectly illustrates the absolutely massive scale of some of these Goliaths. The image shows Vakil Batarshan, a Russian man who suffers from extremely swollen lymph nodes, most likely caused by radiation poisoning. Here, we have an Inuit hunter from the year 1911, wearing wooden spectacles in order to protect his eyes from the harsh sun. Did you know that in the year 1965, Mercury actually offered a wrist-twist steering wheel system? I'd like to give it a try. This is an extremely rare fire tornado that was captured on film in Hungary. This image perfectly illustrates just how huge a bald eagle's nest can actually be. Due to the effects of shallow focus, this real rifle scope looks like a video game. This is the information desk at the JFK airport in the year 1956, and it's giving some real retro chic vibes. This is a picture of what Las Vegas looked like in the 1800s. Actually, this is Vegas before it was even founded. It didn't become a city until the year 1905. And this is what the Brooklyn Bridge looked like while it was under construction. This is how big a baby kangaroo is when it's born. It's about the size of a quarter. It then spends the next 4 months or so in its mother's pouch. This is what Mount St. Helens looked like before it erupted in 1980, becoming the deadliest volcanic eruption in US history. And this was it following the eruption, absolute devastation. Here's what Paris looked like in the year 1900. This is the view from the Alexander Bridge. This photo shows the Japanese perspective of Pearl Harbor from an attacking plane during the surprise attack on December 7, 1941. Did you know that before he was James Bond, Sean Connery competed in the Mr. Universe pageant in 1953? This is a picture of some of Gandhi's only earthly possessions when he died. A couple hats, a couple bowls, and some sandals. This is Anaka, a gorilla who was born with pink pigmentation on her fingers. And this is what her fingers look like up close. This picture of Dorothy Catherine Draper, taken in 1840, is the first photograph of a woman ever. This is what a modern-day banana looks like next to a wild, per-domesticated banana that used to be much more prevalent. This is a photo of conjoined twins Violet and Daisy Hilton, pictured here in the mid-1920s. They spent most of their lives on the sideshow circuit, later suing for emancipation in the 1930s, and eventually working at a grocery store in Charlotte, North Carolina. Violet was even briefly engaged to a musician named Morris Lambert, but they could not find a state to issue them a marriage license. Here's what the bottom of Manhattan looked like in 1933. President Woodrow Wilson had notoriously poor dental health. Here you can see a rare photo of him smiling. This is Brigadier General J.C. Campbell addressing his men after capturing the bridge in the closing months of World War I. Speaking of World War I, here's a photo from years after the war, showing a giant crowd gathering for a moment of silence on the anniversary of the end of the war. This is Emperor Ferdinand of Austria, a ruler known, among other things, for his rather large forehead. Surely his forehead can't be that large. You think, well, this is what he looked like in real life. Recently, the massive Category 5 Hurricane Melissa made landfall in Jamaica. Here's an incredible and terrifying shot of what it looked like from inside the eye of the storm. This is what 1 million in $10 bills looks like. Here's a young woman dressed as Knight for Halloween in the early 1900s. Here are 2 Union Civil War soldiers messing around in a picture and holding each other's cigar. And this is what the Maldives looks like from above. This is Conrad Veidt, the man whose performance in the 1928 film The Man Who Laughs inspired the look of the iconic villain, the Joker. This picture from 1915 shows what the United States and Mexican border looked like in Arizona over 100 years ago. This is the only known picture of Abraham Lincoln's actual casket. The image was lost for almost 100 years until it was finally rediscovered in the 1950s. This is Jacques Plante, who in 1959 became the first goalie to ever wear a protective face mask. Did you know that Ohm telescopes are actually powerful enough to spot planets during the day? Here's Saturn in the bright light of the afternoon. This photo from World War I shows a soldier in a tank sending a carrier pigeon out through a specially designed carrier pigeon slot. And this is what the Roman Colosseum looked like in the 19th century. And just in case you were wondering, this is what a rat getting an MRI looks like. Say cheese. Here's a whole bunch of nurses helping a whole bunch of babies both fight jaundice and get some vitamin D. This is what the Gateway Arch in St. Louis looked like while it was under construction. This is how big the jaw of the largest shark to ever live. The megalodon was compared to a modern great white shark. We're gonna need the biggest boat. This is what the face of the Statue of Liberty looks like from inside. This is Milvina Dean, who, until 2009, was the last living survivor of the Titanic. Speaking of the Titanic, this is what one of the actual life vests worn that night looks like. You're most likely familiar with Maui heads on Easter Island. But did you know that not only are they absolutely massive compared to a person, they also have these stunning, intricate designs on their backs? This is what a great gray owl looks like compared to its skeleton. Here's what one of New York City's very first double-decker buses looked like. This image was captured in 1915. This is a look at the main drag of the gold rush town of Deadwood, pictured here in 1876 in the Dakota Territory. Did you know that some sections of Grand Central Station are so old, 112 years, to be exact, that the footprints of past customers are worn into the floor in front of ticketing booths? Here's a look at a woman competing in the high jump from all the way back in the 1908 Olympics. This photo shows two women being led off a beach by police in 1922 for violating a law that banned abbreviated bathing suits. Some of the women being arrested even fought back. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a prototype flying car, meant to drive on land and fly in the sky. Speaking of neat photos, check out this aerial show of Edinburgh, Scotland from 1920. This is the first picture of a tornado ever taken. It was taken in 1884, long before Helen Hunt was ever born. Pictured in the center is Armi Kusela, Miss Finland, and the winner of the very first Miss Universe pageant in 1952. Here's Armi 10 years later with a big lamp above her head. In 2022, NASA's Curiosity rover captured this strange cylindrical object on the surface of Mars. What do you think it is? This is a man's hand and wrist just moments after being stung by a wasp. I think it's safe to say that he's allergic. Speaking of unfortunate incidents involving the hands, this man severed his finger in an accident, and the doctor stitched it back on upside down. And here is some simple dirt which transformed into glass after being struck by a bolt of lightning. Also, check out this deformed egg that a mother hen laid. Did you know that there's a 10,000-year-old glacial boulder inside of a supermarket in Estonia? Have you ever seen a completely silver ant before? Well, you have now. This impressive structure formed when a fire hydrant exploded in sub-zero degree weather. No, this beautiful owl is not actually possessed by a demon. The red eyes are simply an effect of the flash from taking the picture. This is a skull of a Gigantopithecus, which is an extinct ape compared to a human skull. And just in case you were wondering, this is what the X-ray of a baby gorilla looks like. Did you know that medicinal pills for cows are absolutely enormous? This is what a totally safe, totally not dangerous chairlift looked like in the 1950s. Fun fact, near the end of World War I, American soldiers who were about to be sent off to Europe made a human Statue of Liberty. Before the polio vaccine was invented, whole sections of healthcare facilities were dedicated to iron lungs and treating patients. Pictured here are the two winners of the 1922 Washington Tidal Basin Beauty Contest, Eva Friedel and Anna Niebel. This is one very, very safe example of what a baby's car seat used to look like in the 1950s and 60s. And here it is in action. This is what one of Galileo's first telescopes looked like. Pictured here are a bunch of daredevils hanging out in a 45-foot cross-section of a pipe used to build the Hoover Dam. Did you know that bookworms are not only real, but this is the kind of damage they can do to a poor, defenseless book? And finally, this is what the fang of a ball python looks like after it bites you. Here's Albert Einstein with his sister, Marge Einstein. Can you see the resemblance? This is American soldier Ivan Babcock in 1945, wearing the recovered imperial crown of the Holy Roman Empire, found hidden deep inside a German castle. This is a picture of a Russian farm worker and his family listening to a radio for the first time. This is a World War I soldier wearing an experimental weapon designed for charging enemy trenches. Did you know that for 5 months in 1969, Niagara Falls actually stopped flowing so that scientists could study the effects of erosion? Here's what the empty falls looked like, and here's what it looked like when the falls were turned on again and the dam upriver was removed upon completion of the work. This is Jean Calment, the longest-lived person ever verified. Here she is at the tender age of 120 years and 239 days. And here she is as a slightly younger woman in 1895. This is what an eclipse looks like from above, way above. This is Alfred Stratton, an 18-year-old who lost both arms in the Civil War after being struck by a cannonball. He survived the war, but passed away a little over a decade later. In 1940, a German fighter bomber was shot down over England and promptly paraded through the streets of London. In the 1890s, an upright Roman statue, the statue of Antinous, was found intact and on its pedestal beneath the surface of the ground. This is 12-year-old Hussein Abdul Rasul, a young worker on Howard Carter's expedition, who discovered the first step that ultimately led to the entrance of Tutankhamun's tomb. And here's Howard Carter inspecting the just-then-found sarcophagus of Tutankhamun in 1922. This photo shows a group of men penny hanging, a practice where you'd pay a penny or two for a rope to lean over and sleep on for the night. And finally, this is how big the anchor chains of a ship actually are. Did you know that in the day their rocket blasted off to the moon, the Apollo 11 astronauts enjoyed a breakfast of steak and eggs, which were chosen to minimize bathroom needs during the early stages of the flight? This is what the Eiffel Tower looked like while it was under construction in 1888. And here's what it looked like a few years after it was finished at the 1900 Paris Exposition. Here's what the entrance to the tomb of Tutankhamun looked like after it had been cleared and uncovered. This is Otto Richter, a German Jew, and his wife protesting at Ellis Island to oppose his deportation back to Nazi Germany after he was found without proper immigration documents in 1936. This is what California's Highway 101 looked like way back in the year 1912. Did you know that in 1921, Canada actually developed Defense Scheme 1, a contingency plan outlining how it would invade the United States if the need ever arose? In 1931, Al Capone and his son attended a charity baseball game, where they had the privilege of meeting Gabby, old tomato face, Hartnett of the Cubs. This is a mannequin called the Machine, used to practice childbirth, first developed in the 18th century by a French midwife. This is what the Louvre pyramid looked like while it was under construction in the late 1980s. Speaking of France, here are two construction workers passing a flag through the breakthrough hole in the English Channel. These were apparently the requirements for becoming a flight attendant for at least one airline back in 1954. This is the terrifying mask that the murderer Edward Pacenol, also known as the Beast of Jersey, wore during his attacks on victims. This is the first ever photograph of a medical operation, which was taken in 1847 in Boston. The so-called medical treatments of the past could be truly torturous. This is the Costa Concordia, otherwise known as the cruise ship that recently ran aground and tipped over off the coast of an Italian island. And this is what it looked like after it was put back upright. I mean, just check out all that intense damage. That'll cost a pretty penny to repair. Oh wait, we don't have pennies anymore. Here are some little protesters protesting against daylight saving time way back in the 1960s. Cute. This is what one part of the border between Belgium and the Netherlands looks like. And just in case you were wondering, this is what the inside of a quarter looks like, the more you know. This is what a hummingbird egg looks like compared to an ostrich egg. This is what the inside of a Coca-Cola freestyle machine looks like. This is how huge the state of Texas is when compared to mainland Europe. After all, everything's bigger in Texas. Tell me, do you know who this is? Well, it's actually former President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. Here he is again in the year 1980. And this is what the United Kingdom looks like from space. Are you at all familiar with a blobfish, otherwise known as a lovable, kind of human-looking fish with a super weird face? Did you know that grocery stores in Paris have what they call the American section? I'm guessing everything is jumbo-sized. This is what a shark's brain looks like compared to a dolphin's brain. This is what the border between the US and Canada looks like in Eureka, Montana. Believe it or not, water bottles this tiny actually exist. And finally, these are Belgian blues, a breed of cattle born without myostatin, which is a protein that inhibits muscle growth, thus causing an extremely muscular bull.